We are building the laptop store project from the Ybyte Python curriculum available at www.ybyte.in. We have seen how dictionaries are used to store data in a key value pair. In this video, we'll spend a little bit more time taking a deeper dive into what keys, into these keys, because there are some interesting rules that must be understood when we create these dictionaries. Remember, we have previously created a dictionary called laptop, which was kind of, representing a laptop for us. This had three keys: brand, model, and CPU. You notice that all these keys are in fact strings. However, this need not be always the case. We can have integers as keys. We can have tuples as keys. We'll talk about tuples in just a moment. Tuples, are kind of specialized lists, which are basically immutable. So we'll talk about all of this with some examples so that becomes a bit clear. But, we can have any of these as keys, and in fact, we can mix these in a single dictionary. So basically, in this case, all the keys are string type, but that need not be the case. We can have strings, integers, and tuples in the same dictionary as keys. However, for the same reason, we cannot use lists as a key. Now, let's take a little pause at this moment. Let's understand this with some examples. So here I have my Python shell. If I have, let's say, a string which is given by, let's say, testing, let's just call it testing. Now, we often do not realize this, but having created a string, in fact, I can access elements of this. Of course, A0 is T, A1 is, let's say, E. We have done this before. We have done slicing as well. We can get multiple elements together. However, I cannot anymore go and assign, for example, this to, let's say, let's say if I want to make it, let's say, B, right? So besting. But that cannot be done because string object does not support item assignment. We often do not think about it, but this is called immutability. So strings are immutable, and dictionary keys also must be immutable. So I can use string as a, as a key. I've been doing that. I can use integers. I cannot use lists because, as you see, if I had a list 1, 2, 3, say 1, 2, 4, well, if I were to do A, say 0 is equal to, say, 10, that's not a problem because my list has changed that value. So the fact that I can change this value makes it what is called mutable, and hence it cannot be used as a key. Just slightly ahead of ourselves, if I were to define the same thing as a tuple, now if I were to do, let's say, this, notice this time round I have this, round brackets, parentheses. This makes it a tuple. Now in tuple, I cannot, just like a string, go and assign, for example, let's say A0 to, for example, 10. That's not allowed because tuple does not support item assignment. So notice tuple and strings are similar in that sense. Both are immutable, and as a result of that, I use them in a dictionary as a key. Strings can be used, tuples can be used, integers can be used. We can even mix them up. So let's just try this. So for example, let's say I create a test dictionary. I just say, well, let's say name of this is, say, Ybyte. Now clearly name is a key, Ybyte is a value, name is a string. My next string perhaps is, say, 0, and I value is, let's say, 10, whatever it means. I can use a tuple as a key, 1, 2, and I can have, for example, its value as, let's say, let's say maybe 100. Let's say, I'm just trying something. Now this is valid because test is definitely a dictionary. I can go and look at test, for example, let's say name, that is fine. That gives me Ybyte. I can look at test 0. That is 10. That's because, remember, 0 is now a key, and hence its value is what I'm receiving. I can even go and look at test, for example, 1, 2. Now that's a tuple, but its value is, for example, 100. So the point is I can use, different data types as keys. But if I were to try and create the same test, let's say, with a list as a key, that will cause a problem. Notice now this is a list. If I were to try and create, let's say, this as a key, and let's say I put, let's say, 10 here, that will tell me, look, this is not allowed. In fact, I have a, unhashable type list. Basically, in simple words, lists cannot be keys inside a dictionary. Now, also in this dictionary, in any dictionary, in fact, we cannot have repeated keys. For example, let's say I have, here we have a laptop dictionary we are creating, brand, model, CPU, all strings. But let's say I were to override this by another statement where I've got brand occurring twice. Now this is actually not allowed. When I run this, what happens is interesting. Basically, my laptop dictionary, you will notice my laptop has become brand model CPU, and you notice that brand is now WHP because this brand over here, has gone ahead and overwritten, for example, the first brand. So the point is, every dictionary can have keys that are unique, and that makes a lot of sense because every indexing is happening through the key. So the keys have to be unique. Keep in mind, however, that brand with the big B is not the same as brand with the small b. So if, let's say I made a mistake and I said, okay, look, big brand with a small b, and I run this piece of code, definitely my laptop will allow that because to the Python interpreter, the brand with the big B is not the same as the brand with a small b. So that's a different key altogether. And finally, I think it's kind of clear. But while we cannot have repeated keys, we can definitely have repeated values. So let's say I have another dictionary called test. I call, let's say, 0 as a key maps to 0. Name as a key maps to 0. Let's say maybe a tuple here, 1, 2 as a key also maps to 0. That is perfectly fine because keys cannot be repeated, but values can be. If I were to look at, say, test, square brackets name, indeed I will get a 0. So the point is, we can use repeated values, but we can't have repeated keys, which makes a lot of sense. Also, as we saw before, lists cannot be used as the keys, but certainly lists can be used as values, as we will also see later. So these are some important points about dictionary keys. Very important to understand these so that we can use dictionaries properly. I hope you found this interesting. If you think this way of learning is something that you enjoy, we build activities, we discuss concepts, and we take lots of examples, look at our website because that's how we learn Python programming. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.